and beyond who are creating community in the places that we love. Today is Life Coach Friday. If you've been following along with me on my chats, every other Friday I connect with Annette Walters from ReloWomen.com, and we do a little Life Coach Friday because you know what? Who couldn't use an extra help and some tools to get through this crazy world? And today we're doing something I think is very fun. We're answering questions from viewers and we're going to share information. In fact, in the post above this video, you should see a link where you can go in and you can send in your question to Annette Walters, and we're going to address it on a future Chat with Nat for Life Coach Friday. So keep an eye out for that. And in the meantime, I'm happy to welcome Annette Walters. Hello.
Thank you so much. I always appreciate my applause. My applause.
Yes. Yes. It wasn't
So
exactly on cue, but it came.
it did. It did. And I am Annette Walters. I am the Chief Relo Champion of Relo Women, and I am a certified life coach. And I got into this because, and I think this is why a lot of people get into life coaching, is that we just want to help people. And when you really have the tools that help, and I know because they helped me first, that is the best kind of thing to get into.
Absolutely. Now, today, I'm going to pull up here. We have an email. Back in the day, they called them letters, but we do email today. So here is the question that someone has, Annette, for you. It's Dear Annette. Oh, and by the way, people who are watching, I want to let you know that when you submit your questions via the link that's going to be in the description in the caption of this post, you can submit it anonymously as well. You'll have that option. We're not going to share your name and details because, you know, we live in a large community that's still kind of a small community. So this one is anonymous and it's Dear Annette. My daughter is engaged to a man my husband and I are less than fond of. He's very argumentative and gets aggressive in his tone when we disagree on issues. How can we have a more harmonious Easter? Can we disagree without judgment? That's the big question. And Annette, I thought that
Yeah.
was the question of the century. Can
Oh,
we disagree on something without actually judging the other party? I'm
that
sure that's
is
not a
that is
yes
the
or no
key.
answer.
The answer, and it goes in a couple of different ways, but this is so important because we come up on these family gatherings, on these holiday gatherings that we're expecting so much of, and yet every time we bring somebody new into the mix, it
Hmm.
can be disruptive. It's like going out on a mommy son date, which I used to do with my son back in the day, or when the three of us, his father and I and him, would all go out together. It just changes the dynamic. And when you've had these other things going on where you have had disagreements and this boyfriend gets aggressive
Hmm.
or argumentative, and I kind of wish there was a little more detail here, but that's okay. We're going to make up some of the details as we go along, and hopefully it fills in some of the gaps.
Sure, sure.
So we're we've got Easter coming up, and we've got the boyfriend, we've got the daughter. I mean, the
Hmm.
daughter is coming, and you want the daughter to be there for Easter, so
When I would
we're
imagine,
planning
as
on.
you know, as someone who has adult children, and thankfully, I absolutely love my son-in-laws and my son's girlfriend. Um, it's you're right. It has to be hard too for the daughter when your parents, aren't. But from based on the email, it sounds like they're not particularly fond of him, but it's specifically tied into this his response to when they disagree on issues. So you're right. That's
Right.
going to be uncomfortable for the daughter as well.
Mhm. Yeah, because I'm sure she ahead of time she's like, "Oh my gosh, my parents are going to, make a big deal out of this, and then they're going to get in an argument. I just really want them to like him because I like him."
Hmm.
And so it creates this situation, and ultimately it could create separation. Now, how do we keep that from happening? Because
Hmm.
we all have times where we disagree with other people in our lives, but there are things that happen that we make it personal. Why do we make it personal?
That does seem
Um,
to be the case because if you think about, I mean, I we can only kind of speculate here because we only have the snippet of the email that we have. But I mean, let's say if it was political in nature, where he
mhm,
felt very strongly one way about politics, but her parents felt the opposite way very strongly. But in his response of being more aggressive in his tone when they disagree, and my take is that they're feeling that the parents are feeling judged as well.
right.
So both of them are probably feeling that way because both disagree. So what?
Mhm.
That's a good
And
one.
I like
I don't. Thank goodness you're the expert because I don't know what to do with that situation.
Well, and I like that you bring up the other piece of this because what a lot of people don't understand in disagreeing is that there is judgment. There's judgment on both sides. And in a lot of cases we do this to keep ourselves safe. We walk into different situations, is this person a good person to be around? Is this person safe to be around? Are they bringing, goodness into my life, or is it
Hmm.
static? What is it? And so we're constantly doing it. And in a lot of times, this is a good thing for us to do because we need to live our own lives. However, in a situation like this, the judgment is one of those things that that derails things. That's why it's like, oh, we're going to have this argument over Easter. And, maybe the underlying theme is that it's going to ruin Easter, or maybe they'll leave again early or something like that.
Hmm.
So let's talk about early on here. Um, what could, because the parents are bringing this up, so let's take it from that side.
Sure.
Um, what are they making it mean that they're having a disagreement? What would you guess?
I would guess that they're feeling judged because of, his response. If you have a disagreement, and again, we're going to hypothetically say this email's based on maybe it was a political disagreement because that's a popular
Okay.
topic where people are having those issues. That when, if he's coming at them aggressively, and, that can be taken as being, threatening or judgmental.
Hmm.
So there's kind of this judgment on both sides. So if I'm the
Yeah.
parent and trying to put myself in her shoes, I would think, wow, he's really being judgmental because he's attacking me rather than the actual topic, the actual discussion. We're not having a discussion, it's now become
Hmm.
personal.
And why is it personal? That's where it comes to. So let's create a scenario,
Ah,
because when we deal with things like this, the hypothetical is fine, but let's create a scenario. So let's say it is political, because
sure.
that's a big hot button for a lot of people. So, and we'll just throw up there Trump and Biden. We're
Hmm.
still arguing about the election, okay? So let's just throw that out there. And so when the son comes up and says to the parents, I can't believe you voted that way. How could you? Do you know what kind of trouble all of this is? And we're not going to go either way on which side this is, but you know he's bringing into question their character. And I'm sure on some level he just wants them to understand that there's a different way to look at this, or the next time you could save the world by doing this differently. But because he's so upset, he comes at them with, how could you do this? Or, accusatory. Anybody who does that is stupid, and it comes like that. And so now you have somebody new coming into your house that is kind of like a just tinder. It's just ready to go up if the subject comes up. And so the parents are also, it's like, we're just ready for the match to go. And so we have that where we have the accusatory, and then it goes multiple levels, and then the parents are ready for it, but nobody is actually talking about the actual subject. Because years ago I got attacked for how I speaking of voting, I got attacked for how I voted, and I was like, yeah, but that subject that you're bringing up is not why I voted the way that I did. The reason why I voted the way that I did was blah 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 blah.
Hmm.
And but they wanted to make it all about this. And what happens when the judgment comes in is that
Hmm.
all of our views get so very narrow. Like, this is the only way we can think about it. This is the only thing about this in politics and that matters, because this one issue then colors their whole life.
Yeah, and definitely that family gathering for sure if they're, arguing and they're feeling judged because of this disagreement.
Mhm. And so let's say the parents take it one step further. Let's say, the parents then, and this is one of your favorite questions that we've talked about multiple times, what are you making it mean? So it's like the parents are like, he knows that we're going to have an argument. Why would he bring that up?
Yeah,
We
exactly.
don't even want to have the argument. So what is he doing what is his ulterior motives, his agenda? Is he trying to separate her from us? Is he trying to, one up us and, prove to her how dumb we are? Or, and so we start making these things up in our mind and making it mean something that we then act on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because it seems each time, and I've had multiple sessions with Annette. She actually happens to be my life coach as well. And everything seems to come back to that question of what are you making it mean? And I
Hmm.
know for myself, when I have felt in this, and if you're just joining us, we're talking about an email from a viewer who asked the question, can you have disagreement without judgment? And her specific scenario had to do with Easter's coming up. We're not, we get into arguments with our daughter's boyfriend. How can we better, have a more harmonious Easter? And I know for me, when you've asked me that question and I've asked myself that question, when I'm having a difficult time with somebody or a situation, so far, 100% of the time, it's been because I was making it mean something that it actually was not about at all. And because I was making it mean that, I picked up that ball and I ran with it. And crazily, I was the one making it mean that, not the other party. So if I'm hearing you, it's that on both sides, I can see how that would be happening.
Hmm. And the interesting thing about picking up that ball and running with it is that you're running with it in your own mind. So
Hmm.
you are now directing your brain to find all of the reasons as to why that is true and the
Ah.
implications of all of it. And
Hmm.
it's only just spinning in your mind. All of this can happen in a moment while you're in the midst of this, and the circumstances have not changed at all. Matter of fact, the
Hmm.
conversation may not even have come up yet, but you're ready because your brain, you've taxed and you've directed your brain to think in a certain way.
Yeah. So what would be how in that situation then, let's say he comes to dinner,
Hmm.
how do you then, I would imagine that they're bracing themselves because they know it's going to be they've, decided it's going to be confrontational just based on how it's gone.
Okay.
If
Well, let's start right there. They've
sure.
decided it's going to be confrontational. Okay, so I'm going to get back to that what does it mean thing. So, if
Mhm.
they're bracing and they're ready for this to be confrontational, so one of their actions is that they're going to brace. Perhaps they're discussing amongst themselves, what are we going to say if he says this? They're kind of doing the prep mode. We don't want to, and you decide amongst yourselves, well, we don't want to upset Angela, or I'm just assigning a name, but we don't want to upset her, because we know she really likes him, and though we're not too hot on this guy, um, we still want to be in that place where we love our daughter. But what's interesting about this is while they're bracing, while they're discussing how they're going to handle this, you know what they're not doing? They're not feeling love for their daughter
Oh.
because they're completely distracted.
Yeah, that's true.
So, let's back up. So, if you could plan your perfect Easter, your perfect family gathering,
Mhm.
where you're getting together, Easter typically means that you're having a family meal, you're just enjoying each other's company, maybe playing a game
Yeah.
or catching up. What would that perfect Easter be like? Because that's where we need to start with, like, where do we want to go?
Hmm. Yeah, it would be more they would have dinner and then be
Uh-huh.
able to. Yeah, I mean, when I've been in situations where I knew that I didn't see eye to eye with, a relative at a gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of to this point, actually, Molly just made a good point in the comments of, why are some people inclined to gravitate towards echo chambers? Don't difference in opinion help us grow? And I really work at trying to hear it because I can't tell you how many times when and I learned this tool from you, when I'm listening, to really be present and listen and not start going down the rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, they're saying XYZ and all this, but just looking at it with curiosity, like, oh, okay. And I've often asked, well, what brought you to that conclusion? Or tell me about the experience that, where that made you feel that way. Like, genuinely curious, because even when we disagree with someone, the thing I've learned in coaching with you is that that's okay. As long as we're not making it mean something else, it's my beliefs and what I believe to be true and my truths are not made invalid because somebody else disagrees with
Mm-hmm.
me on it. And adding to that, I almost prefer often at times when there is some difference in our opinions, because to Molly's point, it's the only way that we grow. And that's the way that I learn. I'm not convinced that I
Mm-hmm.
do everything the right way all the time. So, do you think that if the parents looked at it that way, kind of like with more curiosity in terms of, or just change the subject, or what do you think?
Um, Changing the subject is going to be like feeding that monster in the basement, which is what we have talked about before. But then
Hmm.
again, it all has to do with their intentions of it. And yes, I want to answer Molly's questions. Differences in opinions do help us grow. However, in order to grow, we actually have to hear and consider those differences without making it mean
Yeah.
anything about us. Anything like, "Oh, well, I was so stupid to, think that other way before." Because if you're thinking that way or you go down that rabbit hole, of course you're not gonna bring on new ideas, because if you bring on a new idea, that means that you were wrong in believing this other thing before.
Hmm.
But there was a quote that I heard, and I don't remember where I heard it from, but it was years ago, and it was strongly held, no, strong beliefs loosely held. So you really stand up for what you believe in, but at the same time, you're willing to take in new information, which is one of the most glorious things about this relocation journey or an expat journey to move to different communities or around the world, is that you realize how many different ways there are to think about a single thing. And so when you're open to it, and you have to be when you relocate or become an expat, you automatically open yourself up and you go, okay, well, how are they thinking about it?
Mm-hmm.
And then that brings you back. And so it comes down to being able to hear. But let's get back really quick to, let's talk about a perfect Easter, a perfect family gathering.
Sure.
And so let's say, like I said before, so the parents maybe decide, in whatever we do, we want to show love and respect for our daughter because we
Mm-hmm.
love our daughter. And so she's bringing this guy in and she loves him. And so he brings up a topic that we have disagreed on before. And so, how do we respond in a way that we're loving our daughter?
Mm-hmm.
So you can change the subject. And if you do that from a place of love and, wanting to love and respect your daughter, that it doesn't go down the rabbit hole of feeding the monster in the basement and then, being a spark that then gets tindered later. And then, the whole thing blows up a half an hour later because the guy won't let it go.
Sure.
But if he brings it up and you're like, no, today's just not the day we're going to talk about that. And he pushes, and you just stay. And because you're in a place where you want to just love your daughter and respect her, that push doesn't mean anything to you. That
Mm.
push that he brings doesn't mean that he's being disrespectful of your house or he's trying to, rip her away from us or, he doesn't actually want to be here and he just wants to start a fight so he can leave.
Mhm.
If you go down those rabbit holes, then that leads to emotions where you're fighting or you're avoiding or you're fearing that she's going to leave or you're angry that he would bring it up. From those places of fear or anger, you can't be in a place where you're loving your daughter, where you're respecting your daughter. Now, like you and I talk about, these emotions, even though as a life coach, I talk about them as happening one at a time. They actually happen in tandem. And it really depends on which one you lean into as to which actions that you take. So if the circumstance is that he says words, in this case, maybe he's brought up that subject that he's brought up before, and
Mhm.
your thought is, I'm going to love and respect my daughter by respecting him. And so
Wow.
the emotion that you bring up is love or care. Or you could go, if your intention is to do that, what other questions that you can ask yourself rather than going down the rabbit hole of what we said you made it mean is that I wonder why he thinks that. What in his past brought him to that conclusion?
Mhm.
Oh, who in his past, taught him that? And when you come at it from that side, then you don't have to avoid the conversation or even say we're not going to talk about it. You can go down the path of basically entertaining it. It doesn't, and this is the big thing, because usually like if we ask people about what they believe, especially when it's very different from ourselves, if we go into curiosity, we typically make it mean that we're considering it,
Mm.
that we want to bring it into our own lives and we're kind of trying it on, if you will.
Well, and that's really interesting because really if you're because I've had experiences where I thought, okay, I believe this. I see this way. And in speaking to another friend of mine who sees it differently, when I did approach it with curiosity and, well, actually, can you kind of tell me what led you to that? How did you come to that, that conclusion, etc. It's fascinating because often what I find is when somebody has an opinion or a view that's different from ours, it's because they had a completely different experience. They came from a completely different place. So that's how they got there. But if they're in your family or it's people that you're working with where you're sharing a common goal, you can still, I can see how just, focusing on, as you said, that, they both love the daughter. So if they both
Hmm.
approach it from the point of view is we're going to love and respect her by showing respect to each other, it does take that whole situation away and they can still disagree on those issues, but that removes the judgment because now it's being replaced with, I'm going to do this out of love for my daughter, but also a curiosity, because you can ask questions and it doesn't mean that you're giving up what you believe. But at the
Mm-mm.
same time, hey, maybe there is something more to learn. Maybe there is something else to see. Maybe it opens the door for us, to grow and understand. And when I've asked that question of kind of how did you get to this conclusion, I could see like, wow, I can really see how that person believes that. That makes a lot more sense to me. Because I think we
Hmm.
forget as individuals that we're not all from the same place. We didn't come from the same background. We didn't have the same upbringing. And there's that saying, you see five different people see a car accident, you get five different reports as to what happened.
Hmm.
So that makes a lot of sense, and that's a great tool and way to look at it is can we approach it from the point of view of we're going to love and we love our daughter, so we're going to be
Right.
respectful.
Now, one of the things that I want to bring up, because in the beginning of this last um, paragraph that you just said, you
Hmm.
were like, so we respect each other. To expect that this boyfriend is going to change sets you up for failure. Because again, there's a reason why he's acting the way that he is. He
Hmm.
is And it's not something that you can change or probably impact over an Easter dinner or a conversation with your daughter that your daughter has with them. And so part of setting the expectations for Easter is getting to that place where you allow him to be who he is.
Hmm.
And you use the curiosity to really see a little bit more as to why he is who he is.
Ah,
What could be really interesting here is that by getting curious and really going down that trail to in the spirit of understanding him, perhaps that either helps you make a connection with this guy, or the daughter sees this guy more for how you perceive him, so that more of who he is just laid out on the table. Not
hmm.
that it's good or bad, but when we find friends, when we have girlfriends and boyfriends and that sort of things, and we're just wanting these relationships, the more that we can know about each other, the more likely we are to find people who actually fit us, who help us be a better version of ourselves. And we, in turn, do the same thing. So it's interdependent, not independent or dependent, but interdependent. So both parties give and both parties benefit.
So I guess the answer to
So,
the question, can we disagree without judgment, is in a simple way, yes. I mean, it's
mhm,
there. It does exist most of the time, but we can disagree without judgment, and we can disagree and even grow from it by, what you're saying, approaching it with curiosity and understanding. And we don't have to agree, but just being open to help me understand you more and how you got there, because that's not going to necessarily change. And I think there's that fear of, people trying to change people. And that's, again, to your initial question, what are you making it mean? That would be, you'd be
mhm,
making it mean, oh, he's just trying to change me. Whereas I love that, approaching things with curiosity and asking questions. And it really, and I like what you said too, it's you're open to hearing it, and you're open to looking at it from a different point of view. Because I believe we can look at things from where someone else stands, and we can
mhm,
understand how they see it that way. But we're standing somewhere else, and we may see that differently. So I think the judgment goes out the window when you can have a discussion from a place of curiosity and share how we each got there. If I'm getting it right and I'm
mhm,
hearing you.
mhm. You are spot on. You're spot on. And so,
I
I've
would like a
learned these
gold
things
sticker.
right there, just for you. One of the places that I learned this was back in 2016 while we were facing the elections then. It was in January of 2016. And if anybody wants to go back and watch this video, it really is enlightening, especially when you think about people coming from two different, like, personal value points of view, and actually having a discussion. There's a gentleman by the name of Andy Stanley. He's out of Atlanta, and he has a talk which you can Google called Election Infection. And he happens to be a well, he grew up in a Baptist church in Atlanta, so that's Southern Baptist. And he talks about how he actually has real conversations with people who are not believers, with
Mm.
people who believe completely different things. And he presents it in such a way that there's such a learning for all of us, that it's not from a place of judgment. He comes at it from a place of curiosity, and the examples he gives are so what's that word? Opposed. They're
Diametrically?
diametrically
Diametrically? I don't even know what
diametrically
that means, to
opposed.
be honest. It must
Somebody
mean
correct
opposites or
us in the
something.
comments. That would be great.
Yep.
But anyway, they are completely opposed, like the magnets that just repel. And
Mm-hmm.
yet he has these fascinating conversations with people who you wouldn't think he would ever step into a room with. And I think that is such a good lesson with all of it for all of us. And that's where I learned initially that if you come at it from a place of curiosity, you
Mm.
doesn't mean that you're actually considering their point of view, but you are getting to know the person. And
Mm.
isn't that, a lot of us have this idea that we do want to serve the people. We want to be a benefit to our communities and to, even those family members who we don't agree with.
Yep,
How
that's
can
right.
we still, how can we still, thank you, Molly. How can we still
Mhm.
love them and allow them to be, and maybe not play in their sandbox,
And
but we
that's
can
what's so.
still love?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead.
that's it.
I
That's
just
it.
I get getting such a kick out of what you're saying because isn't that really what Easter's all about? So the idea with this email where they're concerned about, the daughter bringing the boyfriend and there being this discourse, everything that you said is really what Easter is about. So
Mhm.
that's such a great tool. Approach it with curiosity and be willing to see it from someone else's point of view. It doesn't mean that you have to agree,
Mm.
but there's room for growth because it gives you an understanding. And I feel when we can do that, we can still hold to our beliefs, or maybe we even change our minds on it. But either way, we're kind of holding a space for this other person of, all right, tell me more, tell me how you got there. And you learn, and if nothing else, you understand that person more because you get the backstory of what's behind all that and why they arrived at the conclusion that they're at. That's just a great tool, and that's I love that.
And the interesting thing is that then you have an open conversation.
Mm-hmm.
When we really push our views forward and we insist that other people take them on, we are basically digging our heels in the sand and we both put up a brick wall, unwilling to move from where we are. But
Mm-hmm.
when we have these kinds of conversations, those are the places where opinions and values can shift, and that's where we can all come together on some level.
I love that.
Not like a single woven piece of fabric, but we can still have strands of connection and caring.
Exactly. That is a fantastic tool. Approach it with curiosity and remember why you're there. That's just
Mhm.
I love that. I love Life Coach Friday. Now, everyone else who's watching, there is a link in the caption of this post where you can click on it and you can go to a contact form where you can contact Annette and send in a question and we'll make it anonymous. So it asks for your email, but we're not going to share that or say who you are. And this one was even signed Confused in Chanhassen. So you can sign it how you like, but we encourage you to send in your questions so we can take them up on a future Life Coach Friday, which we do every other Friday here in the Lake Minnetonka area. We're streaming onto multiple community pages. If you have suggestions for someone you want to have on, chat with Nat, because again, I communicate and share all about our fabulous community by talking to the people in and around our community who are creating community in the places that we love. So you can reach me through nataliewebsterrealtor.com or Natalie Webster Realtor on Facebook. Love to hear from you, your ideas, and if you know of great things going on in our community, by all means, let me know. I want to share about it. And Annette, thank you as usual for joining us. And everybody else, I will chat at you later.